I'm kind of amazed with myself, just the ability to keep the regular show schedule here on Friday, even though I'm traveling all around the country. John, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jason. Good to see you.
Good to
Pretty
see you.
spiffy looking digs there. Looking good.
Thank you.
Like
Thank you very much.
the,
This is,
the
you'd
the
be
mobile
surprised.
studio.
Yeah, good deals to be had in hotels around the country. So I'm taking advantage of that at least. And looks good. We've got the simulcast going. You know, John, people who are watching every Friday and sponsoring the show on Subscribestar and Patreon, they know that they can always catch the simulcast of our YouTube previews on the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. So I encourage people to subscribe over there. John is producing lots of videos during the week, goes into detail. People are going to remember oops, yeah, you don't like it when I show my subscriptions. I thought I had that hidden. I tried to follow your advice, but people have been watching the videos you've been producing all week, the heroes of the pandemic. A lot of great content that John is producing there. But really, the most important thing I like to remind people about, John, is that the direct viewer sponsorship of this show allows us to keep going, and at least as long as YouTube doesn't stamp us down. There's a lot of people now who have been getting canceled even by Patreon. So I've been encouraging viewers to become sponsors on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. That is also where sponsors can participate in the beta test of the new Crowdsource the Truth video server. Going to be some new features coming online with that pretty soon, but people can already enjoy a higher bit rate playback of our live streams when they go back to review the videos after the show. I know you've prepared a lot of information for us tonight, John. Where would you like to begin?
Well, I think we're going to go 50 minutes tonight again, right? We've got a full 50-minute show, and then we'll go
Yep.
over to our patron-only portion, which will be a second hour, which will start at 7 o'clock Eastern. So this is going to have a lot of information. This is a 50-minute show, not like a 22-minute teaser. We got a lot of stuff here. So what I wanted to show everybody, I mean, why don't we go to the deck and we'll just kind of talk about what's the topic. We've got some bottom line up front stuff. I just want to kind of review where everybody is at the moment, and then we'll kind of get into the topics.
Sure. Do you got the screen share there?
Yeah. All right. So, today's subject, the title of the video was Kary Mullis's PCR test, the modus operandi, so to speak. And I wanted to talk about these PCR tests because it came up in the interview that I was doing with Dr. Roger Schwelt. And Dr. Roger Schwelt, in the interview that I did with him, which is the upper right-hand corner on that slide, that MedCram, you see the upper right-hand corner thumbnail on that slide that we're looking at, and it says part 3. Yeah. So that's
Yep.
Dr. Roger Schwelt. And in the interview, one of the things that he said, well, he says a lot of really interesting things, but one of the things he says is, a year ago, we're having a terrible influenza season. Terrible. Horrible. And he said that they are using this testing system that we're going to be looking at in the show tonight. And he goes into some detail about it and how it works and what they detected and what they didn't detect. And we're going to take a closer look at that. And so a lot of people have been sending me messages about, you need to get this guy on the show, you need to get that guy on the show, about the testing and all this other stuff about Koch's postulates and all this other stuff. And I don't really want to go down those rabbit holes. What I want to do is understand what doctors are using clinically. And that was the conversation I had with Dr. Schwelt, was here's what they use in the hospital, right? Here's what they use. And we're going to take a closer look at that tonight and see how it works. And we're going to watch a video clip from the company that makes it, right? So we don't have any claims. We don't have any theories. We're just going to watch how does the thing work. So let's take a look at where do we stand right now as far as bottom line up front. In the United States right now, daily deaths are coming down from the peak. All right, so the worst day in the United States was February the 5th, 5,077 people died, but it's been coming down and down and down and down since. So that's the United States. Let's take a quick look around the world. Let's go to the next slide, look at the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom had two distinct nodes, right? The second node almost had a shelf to it, but the United Kingdom is coming off of their second node peak, and deaths are going down dramatically. Let's keep going to the next slide, which is Canada. And let's see what's happening up in Mr. Trudeau's Canada.
Yeah.
Two distinct nodes, right? Two distinct nodes. And the valley in between, you know, you'd almost think that was depletion of susceptibles, and then we went into a new season. You know, it is synchronous with influenza season, and there is no influenza. So that's great. Fascinating. Let's go to the next slide. After Canada, we've got Australia. And how's Australia hanging in there? Australia's hanging tough, still with less than 1,000 people dead.
What happened in August?
So there's that's like a reporting anomaly. That's when they catch up with their crappy reporting from previous weeks, and they throw a whole bunch of numbers in one day. It's like, remember, you probably had one or two employees that didn't do their expense reports for 4 months, right, and then would turn in an expense report 4 months worth of expense reports. That's that guy. That's what happens when people
or either
do
that or
right?
a kangaroo uprising.
Yeah.
Where they can box with their feet.
Indeed, and you know what that can be like.
Yeah,
all right, then we go to let's take a look at the worst country in all of Western Europe. We go to Belgium. So Belgium, you and I had been talking about for quite some time, had the worst deaths per million in their population. And so they're also tapering down. So we're seeing depletion of susceptibles pretty much everywhere, right? That's good news. And Belgium was the hardest hit in Western Europe as far as deaths per million. All right. So great chocolate, bad deaths per million ratio. All right, we go to the next slide.
Good escargot and like French food there too, and beer.
Oh yeah. Oh, French fries, you know, pommes frites. Then we go to influenza. Also, this is sort of like one of the best kept secrets. Is it true that there's 205,000 people dead from influenza while all this other stuff is happening? And according to the CDC system, yeah, the United States is in the midst of the worst influenza season ever as far as deaths. So I'm just simply measuring deaths. I'm not measuring hospitalizations, utilizations, any of that stuff. I'm just talking about how many people died. More people have died at this point in this season than in any other season since 1918, according to their data. All right, so this is not a theory. It's just according to one of their systems. That system could be wrong,
no, wait a
but
minute,
it continues.
John.
Yeah.
So how does Fauci square that whole thing? It was just a couple of weeks ago that he was calling Australia, and they said, Tony, we got no flu. So what's up with that?
Well, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to see, how do you do this? How do you get away with this? How do you pull this off? And I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you exactly how it happened. And it's not that complicated once you understand. And that's what modus operandi is.
I meant to prepare a song for us. I wanted to have that, oh, it's magic. Oh, because we got Fauci doing his magic tricks.
All right. All right, so we go to the next slide, and let's take a look. So this past week, just kind of a quick recap, I put out a couple different videos this past week. The third part in the interview with Dr. Roger Schwelp is where he starts to talk about last year's influenza outbreak and testing people during COVID. And we talk about death certificates, and we talk about all this stuff. And the video has less than 2,000 views right now. It's ridiculous. But he talks about a system that they're using to test people where they get results back in an hour. And as he's describing it, you know, it's fascinating. And so after the interview, I went and researched this system, and we're going to take a closer look at that tonight. Okay.
No, wait a minute.
So
what is this comment doing here?
What's it say?
Oh, it's talking about the 17th letter of the alphabet.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is? Who wrote that?
So I noticed in the last week or so troll armies have come out in the dozens, and all of a
Right.
sudden my videos are getting all these thumbs down and all these nasty comments and stuff out of nowhere. It's like we must have kicked a hornet's nest
Do
without
you know who
even
this
knowing
person
it.
is who made that comment?
I have no idea.
He's a
No
fat
clue.
little turd who's been after me for 4 years, who thinks he's quite clever. But what they're trying to do is just inject that into the comments, I believe, in the hope that, YouTube will then say, oh, this is a 17th letter of the alphabet channel.
Well, I had
and
no
take it
idea. I
down.
just picked one of the nastier comments, and there were dozens of
That's
them. I mean, there was
amazing
like
that
a
you
whole army of these
identified
guys
him.
that came in.
Yeah.
Whole army of them out of nowhere, the last two videos. And also, some of the people in the audience were kind of quick to jump down Dr. Schweltz's throat. And the thing is, we're not done yet. I haven't gotten to part 4. Part 4, I'm still editing. So you guys haven't seen the conclusion yet. And again, when people are rather hypercritical, it makes me upset. Again, we're sharing something with somebody. This is a doctor who has been treating people with COVID for a year and watching people die. And he's talking to a guy on YouTube in a hat and glasses who's telling him everything he just witnessed over the course of the last year was an illusion. And that is a hell of a red pill for a doctor with what did we say last week? He had 4 different specialties, and one of them is pulmonary care, right? This is a really accomplished guy. And some guy out of the blue is sharing this crazy information, and he just watched patient after patient die, not knowing what we know. So when we share information like this with people for the first time, I simply ask the audience to take this into consideration. I put this slide up, and I was hoping maybe you could read this. Can you read that thing on that slide?
It says,
can you read that?
Before you cast a stone or falsely judge his conditions, remember to walk a mile in his moccasins, and remember the lessons of humanity taught to you by your elders. We will be known forever by the tracks we leave in other people's lives, our kindness and generosity. Take the time to walk a mile in his moccasins. Judge softly, by Mary T. Lathrop, 1895. The turd troll who you put up on that comment just a moment ago, he is such a despicable character. He's not even worth our time talking about him, but he needs to read this and take it to heart. John, it's really crazy how you and I are trying to create a show that informs people, entertains them to some extent with the banter back and forth. We try to be funny and use parody and comedy and things to make light of what is maybe the worst situation any of us have ever been in. And as you rightly identified, this army of trolls, these misanthropic miscreants, they're doing nothing but trying to get in our way. And the other important thing to remember is that the timing of what these guys do is very carefully coordinated with what is going on in court with the lawsuits against me. They really don't like it when I tell people that they can sponsor the Counter Lawfare Fund at crowdsourcethetruth.com, because they know that the strength in what we're doing in part comes from the crowd, from people who are watching the show, people who support what we're doing, and they know that some of their best weapons against me are to coordinate these lawsuits such that the Emmys lawsuit and all the stupid little lawsuits that stupid trolls like that guy you put on screen are connected to make it difficult for me to carry on with the show. So for people who like what we're doing, people who want us to continue doing it, the very best thing for them to do is to sponsor the show on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And I'm sympathetic to people who can't do that. You share the video with other people. That's going to help a lot. And I do, before we carry on with the very important information that you have, John, I just want to let people know that there's something happening with Vimeo. Because of the popularity of the shows and all the co-hosts and everything, and because I've really tried to make it as accessible as possible to everybody by offering really low monthly sponsorships, Vimeo is now upset that there are too many people watching, too much bandwidth being used on my account. They want to charge me a huge amount of money that I'm just not going to be able to pay. Now, luckily, the Crowdsource the Truth custom video server is up and running on subscribestar.com. So whether people sponsor you, John, on your Subscribestar channel, or the Crowdsource the Truth Subscribestar channel, or any of the co-hosts on Subscribestar, viewers are going to be participating in the beta test of this new Crowdsource the Truth server, and they're going to get higher bitrate playbacks on our sponsor exclusive shows, and there's a lot more features coming online next week. So I hope people will check that out, because unfortunately we may lose Vimeo, and that's going to have a real negative impact on Patreon. And as of next week, I'm not going to be able to support $2 a month accounts on Patreon. So I want to let everybody know that.
All right. All right. Well, it's, I'm running the stuff over at Subscribestar. I think it's working okay. I'm going to be converting the legacy videos this weekend to the new proprietary Crowdsource the Truth server. So for those of you who are subscribers at Subscribestar, you'll be able to watch a lot of the back catalog stuff probably Sunday night, your time in the U.S.
And actually, that's going to be videos that have been taken offline from a previous dust-up with Vimeo. When Mike Moore and I revealed that Falcon Pajamas guy to be a dope, they knocked out the account and we lost a lot of videos. So over time, Subscribestar is going to have a lot more videos on there. As you said, our legacy videos, even going back to Vegas, are going to be restored over time. And unless Patreon wants to cooperate, and they need to allow the server to work on their site, and so far they're not even responding to me. So I'm not trying to take anything out on Patreon sponsors. We love all of our sponsors and really appreciate everybody. Just advising the audience that moving forward, the future of Vimeo and Patreon are a bit in limbo right now.
All right. Well, I did another video this week on the Johnny Hoover channel that says, "Is your calculator broken?" And it looks at a series of, if you go to the next slide, just go to the next slide and I'll show you what basically is in the video. It's a quick 4 or 5 minute video. And what it shows you is like 3 or 4 different articles from Breitbart, where Breitbart was showing 20, 22, 23,000 people dead in March of 2020, a year ago. But then the CDC said 22,000 people died in October, 7 months later.
You mean total throughout that whole time?
Right. So at the end of the season, the CDC said, okay, we had 22,000 people die, but Breitbart already was tallying it up back in March and was 20, 21, 22, 23, and that's what you see in the video. And you're like, well, wait a second. If there were 20,000 dead in March and then 23,000, but April, May, June, July, August, September, nobody died, and you ended up at 22?
Very weird.
Really? Very weird. Yeah, very weird. Like inside of a prison in an orange jumpsuit kind of weird. It's that kind of
Fauci
really
math.
Weird. It's like really weird, because that doesn't really happen in the real world. So that's I have this saying, everything is evidence of something, right? So if you have a report that says 22,000 died, 23,000 died in March of 2020, then you're going to keep a straight face and 22,000 is the number come October 1st, 7 months later. I'd say nobody who's watching this is going to buy that. Everybody's going to say, what are you, out of your mind? That didn't happen. So let's go to the next slide. I started a new series this week called Bedtime Stories. People kept saying,
I haven't had a chance to see that yet.
Yeah, so people kept saying, just listening to you puts me to sleep.
Oh, right.
And I think
you
they
told
mean
me about this.
But I think they mean it in a nice way. So they said, if you would just read like really boring stuff, I could listen to that when I have trouble sleeping. So I decided, okay, I'll read the executive order for vaccine modernization. And it's something like, I don't know, it's 20 minutes of me reading boring stuff. And there's basically nothing to look at. So this is the kind of thing you could listen to in your car and fall asleep while you're driving, because there's nothing to look at. right? Basically, it's just a document. I put the document up on the screen so you can see what it is I'm reading, and that's it. So this is more of a traditional podcast than I'm used to doing. I used to do these, prodcasts with everything's moving around and videos and clips and stuff. So this is just me reading boring stuff. And the one I posted yesterday is me reading the executive order on vaccine modernization. And let's see, I will post something before midnight Eastern time that will be me reading the influenza burden definition document from the CDC, which is a real doozy, a lot of fun. So nice. I'll be reading that. So for anybody who's having trouble sleeping, put your headphones on, turn off the lights, listen to me read this, and you should be out cold in less than 2 minutes because it is pretty dry stuff.
There it is right
so
there.
We've got
yet another reason to subscribe to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. Seems like a popular video, 2,000 views.
It got more views than it. It's like the most popular video is me reading boring stuff. And, it's kind of funny because I was watching over the weekend. I don't know if it was live or I get it on delay, but I was watching you and Charles auditing some organization that screwed with you. And I'm watching Charles go in there and he's finding the diverted funds. And I'm watching all this stuff. And I'm like, I can't believe there's 900 people watching Charles Ortel audit a charity live. And then I realized I'm riveted too. I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, diverted funds. Where the hell did they divert the funds to? and I'm like, I can't believe it. We're all fascinated watching Charles audit, a charity, whatever the hell that is. So I was watching. I thought that was awesome.
It's the American Conservative Union, the guys that run CPAC, who. You're right. He is auditing them, and they should be very concerned.
Oh, it was awesome.
Because
it was awesome. It was awesome. So if you guys haven't seen that, that's worth watching. And again, I kind of found myself saying, I can't believe I'm sitting here watching Charles audit somebody's financials, and I'm fascinated. It was great. Great show.
You don't want him
similarly,
I can tell you that.
You were talking with David Hawkins earlier. I was getting coffee or something, and I popped in and I made a comment, and everybody said, oh, it's another one of these fake guys. And no, that was really me. And Hawkins... You pulled up a Wikipedia page for some organization that you guys were talking about, and it was like that American organization. What the hell was it? Hang on, see if I can find it. You pulled up a Wikipedia page when you were talking with Hawkins earlier, and I'm looking, and it was the something American organization, and oh my goodness, what the hell was it? Let me see if I can find it.
But what came of it?
Well, as you pulled up the Wikipedia page, it says that this organization was founded by Sergeant Shriver. And right. Sergeant Shriver was part of the Kennedy clan, right?
Right.
And I don't know if that connection, if you guys brought that up, but I saw it on the screen. So if you pull up Sergeant Shriver, there's some connection between the Kennedys and Sergeant Shriver and what you and Hawkins were talking about.
He married, and maybe like Caroline Kennedy, or
no? You'll see the organ. Just go to the Sergeant Shriver on Wikipedia, and you'll see the organizations that he was associated with. Is what you were talking about with Hawkins. That's the point. And he was like, yeah. And now you look at AmeriCorps. Job Corps, Democrat, keep going down all these organizations he was associated with. The Peace Corps, the Job Corps, AmeriCorps, Upward Bound, America First Committee.
Office of Economic Opportunity. That's what we were talking about.
That's it. Okay, so Office of Economic Opportunity. When you click on that, you guys were looking at that, and I said, oh my God, that's Sergeant Shriver. That's the Kennedy guy.
Right.
There you go.
That's weird, though, because,
was created. The office was created by Sergeant Shriver. And you guys are looking at this. I'm like, oh, my God, that's the Kennedy guy. So there's a...
he was married to Eunice Kennedy, who's JFK's sister.
Yeah. But, part of the clan, so to speak, and the fact that you guys were talking about this, and he was the founder of it. The office was created by Sergeant Shriver. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I always thought he was a sergeant in the Army.
I never knew who he was. I
I
never
didn't
knew who
realize
he
his
was.
first name was Sargent. I thought he was actually a sergeant.
He's Maria Shriver's father, right? Arnold
Right.
Schwarzenegger's wife's father, correct?
I
Right?
believe that's correct.
I think so. All right.
R.
So
Sargent.
that's a nice
Sorry,
little detour into the world
look
of
at that
Arnold
little.
Schwarzenegger and Maria Shriver. We found Sergeant Shriver at the Office of Economic Opportunity. So
Yeah.
that ties into your David Hawkins conversation earlier. So,
Excellent.
all right. All right. So we just go back to my deck. We had the bedtime stories earlier in the week between last week's show and this week's show. Meteor exploded over Vermont with the force of 440 pounds of
Whoa.
TNT. So the Leonid meteor shower is the one in April. And what this brings us right back to is 1 year ago today. 1 year ago today, the President of the United States declared a national emergency in every state in the Union, and it's never happened before. 1 year ago today. It was March 13th, 2020, Friday. So Friday, March 13th, President Trump declares a national emergency in all 50 states. Unprecedented. Has never happened before. March 13th. 15 days later, a meteor doesn't explode over Kary, Nigeria. It lands in Kary, Nigeria, 15 days after the president declares an emergency. The president deploys field hospitals in all major cities in the United States, and everybody's told they're not to be used for coronavirus patients. They're for hospital overflow in the event that the hospitals cannot handle it.
Now,
Those
this is
field
also
hospitals were in
pretty
place
close
by
to.
April 20th, and they began deconstructing them on May the 1st.
Right, and then May
Okay,
6th,
that's all public record.
We did this show with Shepard talking about the return of Planet X. Well, this was actually a couple weeks later. He started in with Planet X before that, and then you came back with the research kind of putting some
Confirming.
footing under what he had said. Planet X was identified by astronomers as the 10th planet at the time when Pluto was still. I still consider Pluto a planet. I don't know why that got deplaneted. It's like, would they put like YouTube in charge of who gets to be a planet or not? They deplanet them.
I think it's, I find it racist.
Exactly. You can't deplanet
Pluto. Pluto is a planet too. I mean, come on. Yeah. Pluto matters. Come on.
Pluto lives matter.
Pluto matters. Pluto matters. Yeah. I'm going to make those shirts up. Pluto matters. We love Pluto. How is Pluto not a planet? Come on. Of course it's a planet.
It's not
all right.
Cool
so let's go back to our deck. So this meteor exploded over Vermont this week with the force of 440 pounds of TNT. That's not insignificant. I mean, I'd hate for that to be over my house.
We didn't hear too much about that.
So again, it's raining rocks. The Leonid meteor shower is this time of year. It happens in April. And it was this time of year last year that I believe, hypothetically, this is just a thought. This is not a conclusion. I believe that the president was warned that there might be a risk higher than we were willing to accept, and that implementing field hospitals was the way to go. And that getting people off the roads, out of the airplanes, and keeping them in their homes was the best way to keep people from getting killed. I could be wrong. I could be entirely wrong. But those field hospitals were put away May 1st.
I disagree with that approach. They should have encouraged people to like go skydiving and go to big parties and stuff. Like it's like if the extinction level event, soak up the next 2-3 days because that might be all you get.
Exactly. Right. And remember the movie Greenland, right? Got ghosted as if it never existed, right? All right.
I told you that.
So then we move on to this story.
My former camera operator worked on that. Did that movie ever come out?
It did. It did come out, I think, Netflix or Amazon type release kind of deal. Are theaters even open? I have no idea. Can you go to a movie theater?
25% capacity. I think in New York and LA announced that they're going to open movie. I don't understand how theaters have stayed in business. I was in Shreveport, Louisiana yesterday, walking around one of the theaters that I used to go to when I was there, and it was still there. I don't understand how you could occupy that much real estate for a year doing no business at all. And the CEO of AMC Theaters got like a $25 million compensation. That sounds bizarre to me.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. All right. Well, this next story I think is pretty interesting. When you look at the one thing that was sort of missing from the $1.8 trillion bill that got passed by the government, right? This funding thing that they're so proud of. The one thing that was missing was the $15 minimum wage. And you have to ask yourself, well, who would be the biggest beneficiary of no $15 minimum wage, lots of new laborers, and free health care for all those laborers? Who would be the biggest beneficiary? Would it be the guy who owns the most farms? Are most of these laborers destined to work on farms, or are most of them destined to work elsewhere? If most of them are destined to work on farms, and this gentleman is the largest farm owner in the United States, according to Forbes, and the minimum wage is not $15, well then, who's the biggest beneficiary?
But doesn't Bill Gates want people to like drink poop milkshakes and eat fake beef?
He wants people to not eat meat. He wants people to not eat meat. Well, yeah, if you're the guy who owns all the farm...
Oh, my God. Did you see this article? It's asking from NPR, why did Bill Gates give a talk with a jar of human poop by his side? I can answer that right away. It's because he needed something on stage with more appeal than him.
He needs attention, just, I don't know what Melinda's doing, but I don't think it's working. So that's my hypothesis. I could be wrong. But again, the net of it is he is the guy who owns the most farmland. He probably stands the most to benefit from the minimum wage not being $15 and from the government giving free health care benefits to everybody that he doesn't have to pay for. That's fantastic. If you owned the most farmland, you'd say, come on in. This is super duper for Bill. Let's go back to our deck and keep going. So speaking of Bill, I heard, let's go to the next slide. So biggest farm owner in the United States, Bill Gates. There's a documentary called Seeds of Time about the Norway Seed Bank, to which Bill and Melinda have donated $30 million. And I just saw something yesterday or today, to me the day's blending, I can't remember if it was yesterday or today, about they want to now send DNA to the moon, just in case.
Whose DNA?
They want everything's. They want to create like a Noah's Ark of DNA of everything on Earth and store it up on the moon, just in case.
Somebody raised a very good point. Maybe you know a lot about space stuff. Because I'm thinking as I travel around the United States and see all the kind of destruction, this one-way trip to Mars with Elon Musk is sounding more appealing every day. But someone raised the point, there's no water there. What are they going to do about getting water on Mars?
Yeah, I think that was me that raised the point. I was asking, is he bringing Poland Spring? Is he bringing Evian? What is the game plan here? There is no water on Mars, and the Earth is 77% water. So to me, that's a pretty big delta, and he seems pretty eager to get the hell off of the Earth. He can't wait to get to Mars, and what is he going to do when he gets there?
But wait a minute.
What? Yeah.
Wikipedia says that there is water on Mars. They say there's ice.
Though it exists in small quantities as vapor. Yeah, okay. All right, so that's his game plan, is he's going to go melt that ice and drink it? I'm looking forward to watching this happen. This is going to be the disaster of disasters. You're going to watch people fly there, land, and within weeks, their eyes are going to start bleeding. Their lips are going to start sloughing off.
Oof.
And you go, wow, dude, you don't know what's there. You have no clue.
You might start
They
thinking
they
Atlanta's
can't
not that bad.
contain they can't contain rotavirus, hantavirus, and Marburg virus on this planet. What do you think lives up there? It's hell. And he's got no water. So he's bringing Poland Spring. It's going to be a hell of a trip. How much water are they going to bring with them? And when they're going to
This is the
extract it
biggest
from,
problem. This is the
yeah,
biggest problem, and you raised it because yeah, Pam is worried that I'm going to go check out other planets now. I'm not going anywhere that I can't drive to for a long time. People want me to go to
exactly.
Mexico. I'm very reluctant to cross over a border. I'm actually not afraid of going to Mexico. I'm concerned about coming back into the United States and what the Border Patrol might force me to, between anal swabs and all the other technological breakthroughs that I don't want to be subjected to.
I've seen some horrible stuff happen in Mexico. I mean, the cartels are ruthless. I wouldn't want to
I
drive
mean,
to
I'm thinking
Mexico.
like Acapulco or something, but
I don't know. All right, let's get back to our deck. Stay on track. We've been talking about comorbidities with this outbreak quite a bit, and that the CDC has updated their website repeatedly. And one of the things that's interesting is, it's almost like they're trying to stay a step ahead, because I keep doing videos showing people how I'm doing the charts and how I'm grabbing the data, and
well,
then
they're a
they
step
change it,
behind.
right?
They're
Yeah,
trying to
well,
catch up
but
to John Cullen.
but every time they change it, we look at it again and I say, okay, can we make lemonade out of this, right? What can we do with what they gave us now, right? And what did they screw up this time? Okay, so we look at these charts, and this is their comorbidity. So first of all, if you read the top area, the comorbidity part, there's now 3.8 additional conditions. There used to be 2.8 or
You mean
2.6.
on
Now it's
average for
3.8.
people dying?
Correct. So 6%, COVID is the only thing. On average, there's 3.8, right? But 6% of the people who died, COVID's the only thing that was mentioned. Right? So that's 6% of whatever the big number is, the all COVID deaths. Okay. So this was as of March 7th. So this is as of a week ago from the CDC, which I got within 24 hours. Now, if you zoom into the all ages, to the first column, zoom back into that first column where we were, yeah. And what's that first comorbidity? What's the number one comorbidity?
Influenza and pneumonia.
How many people?
227,629.
Wow, that doesn't sound like 22,000, does it?
But then also this chronic lower respiratory disease, adult respiratory distress, respiratory failure. Basically, if you have any kind of respiratory underlying condition, you want to be very cautious with this.
But we know there's 227,000 that also had influenza. It's right there. It says it right in front of you. 227,000 people had a comorbidity of influenza. But the
Now, this is from a
influenza report
CDC webpage,
tells you,
right?
yeah, you're looking right at it. Doesn't get any more direct. 227,000 people had influenza and pneumonia, in addition to COVID, according to them. But when you go to that CDC thing, it says 22,000 people had it. So that's why I did a video saying, is your calculator broken? Is there something wrong? How do you guys get 22,000 from 227,000? Maybe I'm confused. I don't know. That's probably me. Let's go to the next slide, see what we've got. Let's zoom in on this, and what do we have here?
I
We
think
got
Fauci went
all,
to Brooklyn
all
College,
sexes.
not Bronx Science.
All right, so this is all deaths, all sexes. 14,000 people died from 40 to 49 years old in the country. So 14,000. Of those 14,000, 9,500 were men and 4,900 were women. Okay. When you look at deaths from all causes,
Wow.
you see that the women who died, that's less than 10% of deaths from all causes. And the men who died, it's about 10% of deaths from all causes, which is the column next to it. But what's interesting here, okay, now go all the way out to the right and look what these dummies did again. They're so freaking stupid. It's unbelievable. All right, so you got 14,000, but deaths involving pneumonia, influenza, or COVID. Okay, well, you just already told us all deaths with COVID was 14,000. And now you just told us that all deaths involving pneumonia, influenza, or COVID is 20,000. Well, what did you add? We already had the COVID number. What did you add in addition to COVID in that final column, you stupid fools? You dummies.
Confusing.
What did you add? You already told us the COVID number. And what did you add? Pneumonia and influenza. So if you add pneumonia and influenza, that's P&I, you dummies. So you just told us the P&I number for people 40 to 49. Do you see how stupid you people are? Do you see how dumb you are?
But it's confusing, I think, for the average person. First of all, most people aren't going to look at this. And even when you do, it's like, what?
Right.
That's the magic trick right there. It's also funny that they show us male and female.
The magic trick, right? All right, so if I show you a card, right, like this, can you tell if this card is marked? Can you tell if these cards are marked? You can't tell.
I can't tell.
Because I didn't let you look at it long enough. Nobody's looking at this with that kind of detail, like I am, to determine this, right? And I'm not doing anything magical. I'm just taking the time to look at it, right? So there's 14,000 people of both sexes. Now let's look at men. 9,500 men are dead. Go all the way out to the right. How many men are dead with COVID and or P&I? It goes from 9,500 to what? What's that lower right-hand corner? What's it say there?
12,725.
Okay. So that would be, the group that also has influenza and pneumonia. And we're just looking at 40 to 49-year-olds. We're looking at one little age group. But they're giving us the data. They're giving us the information. Okay, now let's go to the next slide in the deck. This is what, 18 to 29? Look at the difference between.
Yeah.
Zoom in a little bit more. Let's look at the difference between men and women here. Almost 2 to 1 ratio.
Yeah.
Of deaths. Men to women, almost 2 to 1. Okay. Now look at how many women died with COVID, and look at how many women died with COVID and or influenza out on the right. It's twice. So what that means is that, wait a second, you mean there's 600 women died with COVID, but 1,200 women died with COVID or influenza? So that means as many people died with influenza as died with COVID in that age group. Now, what about the men? So the men who died from COVID, you've got, what does that say, 1,134? Is that right? But out to the right, the number is 1,950.
Right.
So that means, so the delta there is another, 800. Right? So we got another 800 men with influenza in this age group. But look at the women. There's 700 women that have got influenza that don't have COVID in this age group. This is what I mean by, if you take the time to really look at what are they giving us now, can we make lemonade from this? And the answer is yes. They're showing us who's dying from these other afflictions in the COVID system. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. All right, we've only got a couple more minutes before we have to go to our patron-only hour. Let's go to the next slide. Jump that next one. Let's go to Dr. Schwelt again. So when Dr. Schwelt, next slide. Yeah, so Dr. Schwelt starts talking about the influenza season last year. And he said, we're testing everybody. He said, but I'm not getting positive test results back, and I'm using a system that's really sophisticated. Okay, and
he's
what
not
we're going to
using
get
PCR.
No, he is using PCR, and he's saying not that many people that I'm getting tests back for COVID. He's saying the machine is not confirming what you're telling me. He's saying that the test results are not coming back COVID and influenza. It's not matching this. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I hear him. And then after the interview, I go and dig in and try and figure out, oh, how the hell is that happening? Let's go to the next slide. Dr. Fauci has a tell. Dr. Fauci's tell is that Dr. Fauci keeps referring to, you can't compare coronavirus and COVID to seasonal flu. You can't compare COVID to seasonal flu. And that's the tell.
Well, why? Why is
Because
that
I'm
the tell?
not talking about seasonal flu. I'm talking about pandemic flu. Fauci keeps comparing influenza, seasonal influenza, to coronavirus. That's not what you and I have been doing for the past year. You and I are not comparing the Yamagata strain. We are not comparing the PDM09 strain. We are comparing the Taubenberger strain. And the Taubenberger strain is considered pandemic flu, not seasonal flu. By whom? By the CDC. So let's go to the next slide and back it up. First of all, the infographic is from the CDC. The next slide shows you the differences. This is all from the CDC. Everything I use is from the CDC. How is pandemic flu different from seasonal flu? What are the differences between the two, right? How do they
Fauci
differ?
has a patent on one.
I don't know. Can you zoom in a little? I'm not sure. I can't see that. There we go. They're perfect. All right. So if you go to the CDC site, what you see is there's a distinct difference. There's seasonal flu, and then there's pandemic influenza. And pandemic influenza is like in a whole nother category, and you're going to see that on the next page. So let's go to the next page. And then I think we got to jump over. And what you're going to see is how this was kind of the key to the whole illusion, so to speak. In other words, how did this happen? If the CDC mortality system says 274,000 people are dead, but Dr. Schwelt is testing patients and it's not coming back positive for influenza, what the hell is going on? How's that happening? And that's what we're going to dig into tonight when we go patron only. I'm going to show you how this happened. And we're going to look at a system that Dr. Schwelt's using called BioFire. And the BioFire system is an incredibly advanced PCR testing machine. And so why don't we run that clip, that magic clip that we had?
Real quick, before we do that,
okay.
We've got Kary Mullis in our graphic tonight, but we haven't really explained to everybody why he's there.
So Kary is the guy who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry and designed or developed this PCR test. And this BioFire system that we're going to be looking at tonight is a PCR testing system. And we're going to look at how it works. We're going to watch the videos from BioFire. We're going to see, how does it work? What does it do? And we're going to learn about PCR testing. And once we understand PCR testing, I'm going to show you how this all comes together. And it's very easy to understand, quite frankly. So we're going to watch some of their videos to better understand exactly what's happening. But if you go back to my deck, just real quick, one last slide. Let's show everybody what the BL4 laboratory, just scroll down one or two more slides. I want people to understand. Yeah. A little more, keep scrolling. So when we're talking about the Spanish flu 1918 virus, the Taubenberger strain, you're talking about a strain of virus. Go up one slide if you would. It's considered by the CDC BSL4, right? This is bio-level containment 4. And it is in the same category. If you look at the bottom of that page now, go to the bottom of that page. It's in this group with all these nasty things. Marburg, and you see it says reconstructed 1918 influenza virus is the last thing on that. Wow. Okay, so it's in the same category as Ebola virus. It's in the same category as Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. It's in the same category as monkeypox and Marburg virus. You need, now go to the next slide. So you need a balloon suit to work with this stuff. This is not
the paper
seasonal.
Mask is not
Yeah, this is not seasonal influenza. This is not seasonal influenza. And that's why Fauci keeps comparing coronavirus to seasonal influenza. And you and I have not been talking about seasonal influenza. I'm talking about Taubenberger.
This is
That's
a
the
wild
strain I'm talking
job
about.
to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really does emphasize, John, how, people thinking that a piece of paper towel over your face is going to prevent this super deadly virus.
Go,
I mean, when
go to the next page. Look at the next page. Do you want to see what this hose is hooked up to? You see the red hose? This is
yeah,
what
no,
it's
I've
hooked up
seen that
to.
before.
Yeah, that's what it's hooked up to. Yeah, yeah. And you're
To
going to wear a
prevent it
paper
from
mask.
escaping the lab.
You're going to wear a paper. Yeah. Put your paper mask on and go walk into Bed Bath and Beyond and tell me if you can smell the candles.
Well, not only that, what I was going to say, when I wear it, I have my glasses on and I see my glasses fogging up. So obviously there's material coming out from, it's
ridiculous. Come on.
But we don't want to question anything because this is YouTube.
No,
so
I'm saying I can smell the candles, right? If you walk into a candle shop with a mask on, can you smell the candles?
Yep.
And are the odoriferous components that you're smelling, whatever those candle particles are that you're smelling, are they larger or smaller than virus particles? Next topic.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time for right now, but people are going to be able to join us on the sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I detect an illusion.
You just have to do the practice. You just have to practice.
Nicely
You just got to do the work, right? And if you practice for 50 years, you can pull cards out of the air.
Nicely done, John. We'll see everybody in less than 10 minutes on Subscribestar and Patreon. Today's show will be live streaming on Patreon. It'll be there on Patreon after we're done. But just to reiterate, changing fees at Vimeo and limits to the technology on Patreon are preventing me from using the Crowdsource the Truth server on Patreon. So want to encourage sponsors to join us on subscribestar.com, whether you're sponsoring John or you're sponsoring any of the other co-hosts, or you're sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth. If you've recently signed up for an annual subscription on Patreon and you're interested in moving over to Subscribestar, send me an email on truth@crowdsourcethetruth.com. We'll help you unravel that, make sure everybody gets the sponsorship position